everyone, we're Gravity Hacker. I'm Mary, and I worked on finding the artwork, working on level design, and actually implementing some levels.
Hey, I'm Basant. I largely worked on level building on paper and playtesting, and I also helped build some levels.
Hey, I'm Alec. I worked on designing some level elements in Logic and some of the enemy AI.
Hey everyone, I'm Justin, and I mostly worked on the boss fight and a lot of the player controlling scripts, and as well as the level design.
Okay, so a little bit about our game. Gravity Hacker is a gravity puzzle platformer. The initial game was really just a platformer, and we wanted to make sure we incorporated the puzzles into it. So we worked a lot on gravity and how it affects different puzzles. So we started out by coming up with ideas with the gravity we just talked about and building the levels on paper and showing those to people and seeing how they reacted to them. We decided to use Unity to build our game because a few of us had experience with Unity and it had a nice 2D engine, which we knew we wanted to implement into our game. So when we actually started to implement our game, some of the group members started to build different components for levels, such as lasers, spikes, those sorts of things that we could actually incorporate into the levels while people were still working on building the levels on paper and finding the artwork. And then we came together by just implementing those into the actual levels and getting our game to work. So personally what I did, I actually created our little pixel player and helped find a lot of the artwork that we used throughout our game. I made a skeleton for one of the levels so we could implement everything through that and helped work with some of the ideas on paper.
All right, so moving on to the level building and playtesting process. What we really did was very early on in the semester, we drew out a bunch of ideas and levels on paper just to sort of get some direction where we wanted to go with our game. You know, what kind of things we wanted to code, what kind of puzzles we wanted people to be solving. And we spent a long time just reviewing that. We asked some friends what they thought, and we sort of worked internally. Eventually, we moved on to a paper playtesting process. And what we did was we gathered some people from this class, some other people we knew, and we showed them some of the levels we drew out and what they thought about it. And we got quite a bit of feedback from it. So some of the things they said, because this game is more like a demo, all of our levels are very different. And so one of the bigger feedbacks they gave us was having consistency in the rule set of the level. You know, make sure that, you know, if a monster has to die in one level, it should probably die in other levels. And another thing they talked about was camera view. And that was kind of something we struggled with level building, was the idea of having a static camera around the whole level or a camera that zoomed in and followed you. With some of the bigger levels, it's a little impractical to have a completely zoomed out camera. And so what we did was, for one of the levels, we actually modified it slightly to where the camera showed half the stage and moves up. And then another thing was just general level rewards. That kind of falls into the category of animations and sounds, something we didn't really get into too much in our project. We mostly worked on the gameplay and the AI. But what people said was that when you complete a level, they like to be congratulated or rewarded in some way. And another thing, one core aspect of our game, being called Gravity Hacker, is the gravity itself. So we had to decide whether or not when you change gravity, whether there'll be a delay on it, whether it'll reset your velocity, how much of your velocity is kept. And so we talked to some people about that when we paper play tested it, and they said that they would prefer there to be like a minimal delay on gravity changing. And then, you know, at the end, when we ended up finally building our game, we kind of just showed it to some people and just got some general feedback.
All right, so once we started implementing actual code, we initially worked on just the core game elements. So we split it up into the player controls and kept that separate from the puzzle mechanics and puzzle elements of the game. So after we got the core elements established, we later started fleshing out things with artwork, and then at the very end, we implemented the UI and some usability features. So with the level elements and logic, the first thing we implemented was a logic manager that controlled the inner object communications for things like buttons and doors that had logic states. Initially, the logic manager was just designed to work with those buttons and doors. And as we added more elements like lasers and keys, we added on to the logic manager. We also designed it in a way so that different objects could implement their own ways of using states and detecting their own states while still using the logic manager to communicate with other logic objects in a common way. So later on with the enemy AI, we implemented that with mostly a state machine. It imitates the way that a actual enemy would roughly react. It looks for a line of sight to the player, and obviously if it can't get a line of sight, enemy can't see the player, so it just continues to wander around. And then it also has a limited field of view for being outside of which the player is not detected. And if those two conditions are satisfied, then it will shoot at the player.
All right, and so I worked mostly on the boss, which is like the kind of like the grand finale, and I was really excited to work on it. The boss is mostly comprised of a lot of triggers. So when the boss moves around and triggers things, it like indicates for certain things to happen. So that's a big part of how it works. I also worked a lot on the player controls. So the first thing we did was the most important core mechanic was the gravity. So the first thing we looked into was playing with how could we manipulate the gravity and what effects would it have to certain components of each level. So that was pretty easy to mess around with because the Unity 2D engine is very friendly. So yeah, I just wrote a lot of the scripts for that and worked on a lot of level design. So that's basically the work we put into the game, and now I'm going to show you a quick demo of some of the parts.
Hey guys, so this is Justin again, and I'm going to show you a little bit of our game. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a more interesting level. We'll skip over the tutorials and we'll take a look at level 1. So here you can see some of the gravity effects we've got here. So I've made gravity go up, back down, make it go left, and you can see how it affects the alien trapped inside the little box there. And then we have some buttons here that can usually are mapped to some random walls within the scene, and you have to try to figure out what they do and figure out the puzzle. So for example, those two buttons open some walls, and now you have to figure out how to move the alien to get his key, which he just dropped because I killed him with a laser. And now you have to figure out how to get the key up to you so you can grab it, which will open the door to the portal. So a lot of the levels involve kind of you just trying to figure out what's going on and using gravity to solve these kinds of puzzles. So you get that box trapped in there, and that button actually opens the door that the key is going through right now. And then I can direct the key through, grab it, and the door's open, and I'll move to the next level. Not going to beat this level, though. I'm actually going to go ahead and show you some of the boss. So I'll do the boss level here. So the boss kind of just starts out, and he's spinning in his little death machine, and he's got a couple of attacks he'll use. What actually happens is there's a lot of hidden components to this map, and when the boss passes through them, it sends a lot of messages to other components, and those components will spawn different kind of attacks that he does. Like, for example, the fireballs coming down will happen when he hits a certain region, and it'll keep track of which one he did last, and it'll do a different attack the next time. So, for example, this laser thing that you have to dodge and kind of go through. So that's it for the demo. And we had a blast making this game, and if you try it out, hope you like it.